Last registered delegate is Regan Sunshine Bruce.
Hi everyone. It's been a while, but nice to see some of you again. To my fellow committee members, I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks. Forgive me while I pull this here and figure this little shindig out. There we go, we'll see what happens. So I am here today because I started thinking about one of the topics I've heard a lot about lately, climate change. And I started wondering to myself, what if it was me? What if climate change unhomed me and my family? As the mom, could I get us back on our feet? So I went online and I started looking, trying to look at what the municipal response would be if we experienced one of the crises that we're experiencing globally regarding climate change. The floods that were just mentioned, tornadoes, fires, temperature change, just so many things that we're looking at right now that could put any of us, yourselves, me, anybody in this room, in a situation like many in our city are experiencing right now, without a place to live. When I went online, checked in with Madame Google, if you will, she gave me some information. She told me that the City of Kitchener Emergency Response Plan, dated 2017, December, defines an emergency as distinct from the normal daily operations as carried out by municipal first response agencies and city departments. Okay. It also offered me the Emergency Management and Civil Protections Act, where they defined an where it's stated here, a situation of, this was the definition of emergency, sorry, a little nervous, I can't help it. A situation of impending situation, a situation or impending situation that constitutes a danger of major proportions that could result in serious harm to persons or substantial damage to property, and that is caused by the forces of nature, a disease, or other health risk, an accident, or an act, whether intentional or otherwise. I'd like to suggest that we've caused an accident. It wasn't intentional, not at all. None of us meant to, but it is posing a danger to many in this community. We have a situation on our hands, and a further impending danger of major proportions. We can't hide from the crisis of affordable housing. Solutions need to be found. We can't delay necessary action to solve this crisis. I'm here today to ask that in response to the current emergency, the current crisis that our citizens are facing, that we take immediate action to implement financial response within our budget in 2020. What I'm here asking for today is a permanent budget line titled Affordable Housing Initiatives Funding to be added to this year's budget. This assures that as dealing with affordable housing will continue to take place each year. It's how we commit to our citizens' need for support and housing stabilization. It's how we tell them that we refuse to allow our most vulnerable to be forgotten. It's how we acknowledge their need. And we express that they hold value as individuals, not just statistics. The funding that I'm asking for is a $5 million contribution from the City of Kitchener as a commitment over the next 5 years. Now, within this contribution, if you notice up there, we have a layout of the amount annually. I'm asking for an initial annual contribution this year of $700,000. This amount is to include the funding for the Affordable Housing Strategy Committee as a portion of commitment from you guys already haven't been offered. So essentially I'm reducing the commitment that I'm asking for this year by the $200,000 amount that you've already committed to. Additionally, I am asking that any unused balance rolls over to the following years within this account. Any remaining funds at the end of this timeline remain available for communal use until it reaches zero. I don't want to see any reallocations of these funds. I want them to be for this community. Now, this is not to apply to any other funding except for that I'm asking for today if this account is selected to be implemented, and if there's any other funds put into it. I'm not suggesting that anything with those funds would be contingent on not reallocating. That's up to you guys later on. I'm suggesting that not myself decide, but that we take further clarity of purpose and details to the Affordable Housing Strategy Advisory Committee to be approved, recommended, and once that's done, brought back to Council for a final decision. Now, these funds that I'm requesting are not specifically being intended for any committee use. I am on the Affordable Housing Strategy Committee. I'm not here today on behalf of that committee asking this money. However, that committee, as well as any members on it, would be allowed to access the funding in standard form as we determine it should be accessed. I'm asking for no funding access until discussion and recommendations are completed, delivered, and approved by this Council further. I'm asking for this funding to be mainly capital in nature. Thing is that we do have a housing crisis on our hands, and we have a lot of local agencies that don't have access to the funding that they need on a local level to try to help create response to this. I'm asking that the administrative costs be kept away from it and just kind of stay towards the capital as opposed to operational costs. What did I do there? Oh, there we are. Reason is that, administrative costs can eat up a lot of a budget, and I'm only asking for a small amount. I'd hate to see that happen. I'm asking that the full remaining portion of funds are to be for the public, for the organizations locally, and groups, and any form of initiating response to this community's direct housing needs via housing creation. Ultimately, this would create an imminent funding availability of about $500,000 as soon as we determine the terms, and these would be available for the community right away. I'm offering here, or suggesting, if you will, that perhaps we could contribute part of these donations in lieu of dollar contributions. I hear a lot of people suggesting that we need to have, land usage, or I've heard even today the suggestion of perhaps properties that could be used, or buildings and facilities of the city that might be available for organizational use or just responding activity to the situation that we're currently in. I am suggesting, or requesting, if you will, that the in lieu of dollar value would be applied at the most reduced of the standardly offered rates. Reason is, we could eat the whole $1 million a year with just that. Let's not use it all up that way, if you will, and let's make sure where this is getting out to the community. I'm suggesting as well that any vertically sourced funding that this municipality could acquire from provincial, regional, or federal government would be deemed to a maximum of an annual $1 million contribution. I'm not necessarily looking to put the onus of responsibility on this council. What I am seeking to do is to create locally accessible funds with less direct red tape for our organizations to respond with. When you talk to people and you hear ideas, and I've been doing a lot of that lately, it always comes back to it's really hard to navigate seeking grants. It's really hard, and there's not always the knowledge that's needed for projects and initiatives that are trying to help the members and the citizens of Kitchener to respond. Let me refine myself here, if you don't mind. Now, I am also, one of the reasons I'm seeking to have this kind of stay maintaining towards capital, if you will, is that I'm not sure what the terms are of the accounts and stuff. I haven't had the chance to look into that. But from what I saw in, I believe it was budget summary page 11 or 10, I apologize if I'm off there, but the reserves state that they're intended to be available for flex of budget when required. I'd like to suggest that we have a need. Our citizens have a need to address this situation. We all know, and we've discussed.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up if you could, please. You've had much more than 5 minutes.
I apologize. I've lost track of myself. I totally do. Essentially, we know that the housing needs assessment has created a harsh perspective. There's a lot of citizens dealing with this. At the end of the day, if we remove the many stigmas of the situation, all that we're left with is citizens that are suffering substantial damage through the results of an accident that we unintentionally created, our volatile housing market and the crisis that we are currently within. Last phrase, I promise. And though it may be viewed as a currently distinct state from our norm, it needs to not be, and it shouldn't be treated like such anymore. I don't want this to be the norm. I don't want this to be the baseline that we use as the normal standard of city operations. What we are dealing with is far beyond that. We can improve it. Let's adjust the baseline. Let's decide that this is not going to be the City of Kitchener's norm, that this is an emergency, and let's respond. Thank you. I'm sorry for going over my time, guys.
No problem. Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Regan, can you tell us what you would see as a priority spend if, for any funds that might be available for affordable housing?
I think, sorry, I don't have a cup, I'm sorry. I think that ultimately we have quite a few demographics that are dealing with crisis as we have outlined within that situation. I would like to see us focusing on the very lowest tier of income categories that we're placing within that report. My main reason for this is that we are ultimately including everyone by doing that. There we go, I have my voice back, sorry for that. In terms of priorities, I think what I'm here for is one of the biggest ones. I mean, we need to have funding available. Everywhere I go, everything I've been hearing, and I have been putting in a lot of volunteer time towards the Housing Committee because this is important to me. Everywhere I go, everybody's talking about, but we don't have the funding. And the people that I'm speaking to, I do recognize that many of them remain in that situation because they don't know how to acquire it either. I'm thinking that by providing this funding directly through our municipal council, that we basically give our citizens an opportunity to respond without having to take on the challenge of seeking it elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no further questions. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point in the evening, there is no one else that has formally registered. Is there anyone here in the gallery that would like to address this committee that has not? You could just raise your hand.